Next, we're going to have some case studies. I'd like to bring Kieran James Lubin of BlockApps, Paul Brody of EY. Paul, you're going to be second, so I think we're bringing up Kieran right now. So again, Kieran James Lubin of BlockApps, and you're going to be giving us some interesting and relevant case studies. So we're excited to hear what you have. Do we have
Thank
you there?
you.
All right, I see you there. So it's all yours. Take over.
Share my screen quickly here. All right. Well, thank you very much. I'm going to really try to stay to time. So I have about 10 slides, 1 minute each, which leaves about time for one real case study. So hopefully Paul will have a good second one. Very quickly on us, we've been in the sort of enterprise blockchain sector really from the beginning. In fact, we helped sort of create the category, both launching blockchain as a service with Microsoft kind of late 2015, early 2016, and also helping to found the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance, which we remain a board member of. So what we mean by enterprise blockchain technology has sort of changed over the years. In the very early days, there was the idea that you would consume blockchain technology really just like other platform services, databases, ERPs, cloud, et cetera. It's definitely changed in the last few years. There's been a lot more focus even on the enterprise sort of no crypto, let's say, side on deploying larger industry networks that interconnect more parties, but are still sort of focused on specific needs of business, and less so on fully open systems, especially with cryptocurrency. John Whelan, who you may have heard from earlier, you'll hear from later, is fond of 3Ps, privacy, permission, and performance. That's really what we aimed ourselves at in the early days of the company, and increasingly have moved up the application stack. So providing solutions for specific industries, like Trace Harvest, which was developed in partnership with Bayer Crop Science, one of our big customers, which I'll end up talking about today. So thinking about just sort of a backdrop, like why should businesses, big businesses, small businesses be interested in blockchain technology? Again, we're thinking about an audience that's not really crypto-centric. It's not. These are not necessarily technology enthusiasts. Certainly some of these people are at these big businesses, but the majority are sort of looking for just solutions to their problems that provide a financial return or just an easier day-to-day set of operations, et cetera. And what we're seeing is that, global trade's way up. So there's a lot more collaboration, smaller world in some ways. This creates more competition also. Companies have to move a lot faster, and that's driving greater reliance on external companies. So your average enterprise, let's say in the Fortune 500, probably has 5, 10, 20,000 vendors. There are big sectors of outsourcing that are growing really rapidly. Cloud, obviously, but things like contract manufacturing too. Companies are entrusting major operations to external parties, so that they can focus on their differentiation. You don't have vertical integration anymore. And a lot of the IT systems that these enterprises depend on were designed with a very internal-centric mindset, ERPs in particular, in which the enterprise could be assumed to sort of have total information about what's going on. And it turns out that that's, of course, not the case. And there needs to be a new architecture for the way business is done kind of going forward. And this is really coming on the last 18 to 24 months. Sustainability has always been, in the public discussion, but enormous increase recently. Big change in consumer preferences. It used to be that organic was enough. Now, what does organic mean? Consumers really want to know where their food comes from, how products are manufactured. What are the operations that companies use? Are they using, the right sort of labor, all that sort of thing. So there's, at the same time as a much more complex business environment, tremendous pressure on companies to be more transparent in their more complex operations. And so what this means is you've got to kind of design your IT systems to fit this, future and present, if you will. And there have been approaches to this to date. So, the left-hand side, basically, you can imagine a company with a database, an ERP, they're working with externals, and they've got some sort of direct connectivity, APIs, emailing each other. Spreadsheets is still quite common in the business world. And what you find is it doesn't really scale very well because there's no real traceability. There's not a standard data model across all the companies, et cetera. And on the right-hand side, so in industries where you have lots and lots of transactions, for instance, you find people create intermediaries to help manage those transactions. So in financial services, think like the Swifts, the DTCCs of the world, who do a great job. But there becomes a certain challenge in that these parties can become sort of a restrictive bottlenecks in certain cases. So, if companies A, B, C, and D want to do something, they kind of have to either get the permission of the intermediary or find some other means of moving forward. I'm sure this is not a surprise to blockchain people, but when you're thinking about the business audience who's a little bit less familiar with blockchain, we tend to be positioning it this way. Of course, very simply, this solution of deploying blockchains kind of gives you a sort of best of both worlds, in which you have the freedom to operate of having internal systems, but standardization by default, data integrity, traceability, and it helps the enterprises operate, helps them manage technologically the way they're increasingly operating today. So just a little bit on how our product is structured. What we found over the years is actually that the blockchain part can be the easy part. So we kind of just devote one layer in the stack to it. STRATO is our product. It's, of course, based on Ethereum. And part of the reason we helped to found the EEA is that, at least at the time, there were certain features that enterprises needed that did not exist in Ethereum itself. I would say it's still the case today. And we wanted to standardize those extensions kind of under a common roof so that the enterprises felt comfortable that they had sort of choice in vendors and all that sort of thing. So a lot of what we end up doing is deploying middleware. So the blockchain in it is a spectacular. It's a great technology, but people are not going to throw out all of the IT systems they have today, which means you have to integrate with them. And so we find that that's often the hardest part of implementing the software. And we've developed a suite of kind of off-the-shelf connectors, et cetera, to make that easier as you go. We've sort of based frameworks from a smart contract perspective that capture common data models across different applications. So, and Trace Harvest is one that I'll talk about in detail today. But we've actually started to develop specific applications aimed at particular use cases and industries. Given that we've kind of solved the lower layers, what we find is customers are really looking for a specific problem solved, and it's quite a bit easier in certain ways to work with the direct interested parties in that problem versus going purely with the platform, working with the IT organization and having them build out additionally the solution to that problem. So we still do both. We have plenty of customers that just consume our platform, but also have moved up the stack to the industry sort of application layer, we call it, in which we're solving a problem for a business end user. So just a quick spotlight on Trace Harvest, which I mentioned again has been developed over a number of years in production with Bayer Crop Science. So big challenge is basic traceability. So agricultural products generally are not tracked from the seed kind of in genetics origination point all the way through the consumer. In part, this is because there is a commodity, mindset, if you will, but just set of business practices where, a seed is just a seed, a bushel is just a bushel. That's changing, right? So sustainably sourced products, specialty products can be more profitable for everyone along the chain, but require more transparency in operations, more tracking of what's going on to prove to the end buyer, if that's an actual consumer, a consumer packaged good firm, a retailer, what it actually is. Am I buying the thing that I think I'm buying that merits the higher price? Another interesting business practice we've learned over the years is returns in particular. So bag of seed can be good for a number of years, and the business practice in the sector is that you pretty much have to take the returns, and pay full face value. And so these companies that manufacture seed are potentially have a large liability for outstanding inventory. And they don't know, for instance, they go through distributors before they go to the growers. The growers don't necessarily notify them when planting occurs. So they don't know what the level of outstanding inventory is. More or less the same problem happens with recalls. The lack of tracking downstream in the supply chain exposes the manufacturers of food products to big risks financially. So that's another problem that Trace Harvest solves. Compliance also is a big concern, and especially as some of the products require regulatory approval in agribusiness, we've been able to greatly lower the costs and risks around compliance by, again, having much greater visibility further down in the supply chain. So I know I'm just about out of time. Here's what it looks like. Platform, STRATO on the right, just a quick screenshot of the application on the left, and just a sense of the ecosystem we're dealing with here. So we're starting at the seed source, so those are the seed providers on the left, and then moving through distribution, those are the dealers, to growers, on to the processing firms, CPGs, retailers, et cetera, and touching lots of tech companies along the way and other folks. So thank you very much. I know I'm like a minute over, so
yeah,
appreciate it.
When I come on, it's the end. No, it's tough to do this in 10 minutes. Kieran, great info. And yeah, you were able to open our eyes to a lot of different use cases within your presentation. So thank you for your presentation. And as you mentioned, thank you for your work with the EEA in our past, present, and future. So thank you, Kieran.
Thank you.
Yep. And if we can get Paul Brody of EY. Paul is gonna.
I'm here.
Awesome.
I'm here. Can you see me?
I can see you now. Is that a fake background or is that your real background, Paul?
This is the EY Blockchain World Headquarters. It's currently located between the car charger and the recycling bins, and down the hall from the bike trainer. So
that's awesome. Awesome. All right, Paul. Well, take it away. Can't wait to hear what
you
have to say.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. So first of all, I just want to say thank you. I as I tell people, like, I feel like a bit of a superhero when I get invited to do these things, because I'm so flattered by the company that I'm in. So I'm really honored, and I won't play too much more with the video effects. Instead, I'll go to the actual content. So let's do that. And hopefully you can all see that very nicely. I want to start with just a sentence that everybody who works with EY probably sees all the time, which is, we believe that blockchains will do for networks of enterprises what EY did, what ERP did inside the single enterprise. And if you've worked in a large enterprise for a long time, you've sat through some kind of ERP implementation meeting. And what everyone says is, we're doing this because we want everybody in our organization to be on the same page about the data, to be on the same page about the process, and to execute shared processes. Well, this is actually really, really hard to do. It's much easier said than done. And in particular, the minute you leave the enterprise boundaries, your sophistication, your shared process, your shared rules, your common data sets, they all go out the door. So how do we recreate that? And I believe the answer is blockchain. Blockchain gives us this level playing field on which different companies can participate with each other. They can have shared process, they can have shared data, they can have shared business logic, they can have transfers and payments, transaction reconciliation, they can have all of that in a single ecosystem. So that's something we believe very strongly in. Our big, one of the things that we've done at EY, and I'm very proud of, is we've done so much work around audit, around financial statement services, around giving people confidence in their ability to transact. But we're also, and we're building a really great business. I'm really proud of kind of the huge milestones that we've achieved over the last 5 years in terms of consistency and growth and performance. And I can't share those publicly yet, but last year was a huge year for us, as it was for everybody else. And I'm kind of thrilled with the results of the team. More importantly, we are hugely committed to the ecosystem. And in particular, there's lots of people who are doing cool stuff out there, who are doing amazing stuff to scale the ecosystem, to improve the maturity. The developments on layer 2 are particularly amazing. The thing that we've staked out, the area that we've staked out and focused on is privacy. We believe one of the key things that enterprises need to have confidence in business transactions on the public blockchains is the ability to do those transactions with privacy and security. This is why we invested in and helped found the Baseline protocol. It's behind Nightfall, which is a set of tools that we have donated into the public domain that support privacy. Our latest contribution is something called Nightfall 3. It's public domain, it's open source. It's a ZK optimistic rollup that allows you to do private, secure transactions on the public Ethereum network for under 7,000 gas, which is just kind of an incredible, kind of capability. And our newest contribution is also something called Starlight, which is all about secure private business logic encoded as a mathematical proof that's executable on chain with privacy. And that's another thing. It's also fully public domain and open source. And we are inviting and want to work with other people to mature and expand this, because it's still very much I would say it's right now it's an alpha and a prototype and not a mature system that we can scale up. What I want to talk about today is a particular case study, a project that we have been doing with Microsoft over the last few years. And again, just an incredible honor for Microsoft to select EY to build software. That's an incredible honor. The team at Microsoft has been amazing, and the partnership that we've established with them is really great because it's been all about kind of shared roles and responsibilities. EY developed the blockchain system and the smart contracts. Microsoft developed a lot of the scaling technology and the hosting. And very importantly, Microsoft did something that is hugely underrated in the world of enterprise blockchains. They went first. And I can't say enough good things about companies that have the courage to go first, because I would say 9 times out of 10, when I talk to enterprise clients, they say, a lot of them say the same thing, which is, that sounds really cool. It's going to be transformational. It's amazing. Why don't you call us when one of our key competitors goes first? Well, when you have the courage to go first, that's really incredible, and can't say enough good things about that. Let me dive into this case study because it's one I'm really proud of. It's the work that we have done with Microsoft around migrating the Xbox video game ecosystem, the procurement contracts, the software licensing from traditional contracts on paper, or these days PDF file, right, into a blockchain-based smart contract system that is properly tokenized and based on smart contracts. And it is a really powerful case study. It's on a private quorum-based network. And if you know me and you know EY, you know how committed we are to public blockchains, but it's really important to remember that this contains very sensitive enterprise information, and it predates the time when I would say we could confidently put something like this on a public blockchain. So very, very proud of where this goes. And it really is a prototype for kind of massively scalable public chain solutions. But what we've built is an Azure-based ecosystem where we take data from Microsoft and we ingest it and we transmit it to other business partners in the Xbox video game ecosystem. And by doing that, we do a couple of things. Number one, we automate the onboarding of the contract. So we take these contracts, we have a Azure-based ingestion tool based on machine learning that extracts the key terms and conditions from these paper contracts. We have currently identified more than 50 key terms, right, that we can extract from these. We convert these contracts and the key terms into smart contracts. Additionally, we tokenize the product and the software licenses so that we're moving tokens. You've heard me say this before, everybody, right? Most business agreements basically boil down to, I have money, you've got stuff, and we're going to exchange my money for your stuff, software licenses or other products under the terms of a smart contract. We generate the smart contracts, we get both parties we test them, we get both parties to digitally sign them, and we stand them up and we start running them in production. And, as the prior person who was speaking said very nicely, most of the hard work in this stuff isn't the smart contract. Although Microsoft's many smart contracts are fairly complex, right, because they were all custom negotiated. And I will say this, and I say this with love in my heart, because I am married to a lawyer. Lawyers are much better at negotiating agreements than they are at understanding how to implement them. But smart contracts are complicated, but they're not the hardest part. The hardest part is thinking about how you connect to the fire hose of transactions and data that's coming out of a massive system like the Xbox video game network. We're talking about millions of transactions a day that have to be aggregated into this system, partners that have to be onboarded. I think there's more than 3,000 partners in the content ecosystem for Microsoft. There are more than 30,000 separate contracts in this ecosystem. It is enormously complex. And all of the work is around scalability, testing, maturity, dashboards, ability to audit, right? These are all kind of incredibly important. And throw on top of that, the requirement to have full confidentiality is kind of immensely important. The key takeaways, though, are not in the details of the architecture, which I think are fundamentally relatively straightforward, especially at this kind of marketecture level. The key takeaways are the business value creation, right? And it's just enormous, right? We have taken with Microsoft cycle time for monthly contract reporting basically down to minutes, right? It used to take 45 days after the end of the month. Now, clients, business partners will see transactional data and their share of a license or a royalty 4 or 5 minutes after the transaction is completed, right? 100% near real-time settlement and reconciliation of the transactions across the network. And we believe over time, a 40% reduction in cost. And by the way, that 40%, that's based on the fully loaded cost of the development, right? You know, all of the machine learning work that we did, all of the infrastructure creation, and frankly speaking, the hard work of getting this done together with Microsoft. I'm going to wrap up here with two final points before I hand it back to James. The first is we've created a public version of this. It's called Ops-Chain Network Procurement. It's a relatively simpler version. It handles simple things like volume purchase agreements. And the goal, and this one runs on the public Ethereum mainnet, which I'm very excited about and supports multiple buyers and sellers. And then finally, this is just one part of a very big investment that EY is making in blockchain-ready SaaS applications that make it API easy to plug this stuff into your enterprise and pump out traceable tokens, business transactions, financial infrastructure on both the layer 1, Ethereum, Polygon, layer 2, we're switching on Polygon for everything we do, and then in China, BSN, the Blockchain Service Network, and Fisco BCOS. So with that, I'll finish up and I'll just say thank you again. I'm genuinely honored to be invited to this. James, back to you.
Thanks.